Hello and welcome to 52 Weeks. This week we're continuing in Chapter 8, Economic Development, and we'll be finally finishing up this chapter focusing on priority number 3. Within the previous segments, we've looked at 3 priorities that are listed in the Economic Development chapter, and these are recommendations to the city to focus on 3 main priorities. The first one we looked at was priority number 1, the maintenance industry. The second priority was strengthen the transportation hub, and the third priority, expanding Harrisburg's private business sector. Continuing on with Action 8.8.2.6, identify the potential game changers. A quote from the comp plan: the game changer is just what the name implies, the one asset, decision, relationship, or player that has the potential to completely alter the trajectory of Harrisburg's economy by relationship, facilitation, capital infusion, job opportunity, and economic multipliers. This is in technology, education, and technology workforce development. The way of looking at this is seeing it as a snowball effect. This is a piece that now begins to build and pull everything together and gives momentum to the process. Action 8.8.2.7, establish incentive plan for zoning and implementation and growth. The comprehensive plan quotes, the city must construct a plan for implementation and growth of the Innovation District. The plan provides actionable guidance on how Harrisburg Innovation District will grow and develop in the short, medium, and long term across economic, physical, and social dimensions. Again, the triple bottom line appears within the discussion of the comp plan. Objective 8.8.3, establish Innovation District satellite hubs. Once the foundation is set, it's time to build, not only for the present, but also for the evolutionary eye towards the future. The build stage is not the final step, rather, it is a platform for continual engagement, adjustment, and iteration. This is part of why the plan is important. When we put strategic goals and objectives onto paper, it at least gives us milestones to look at and allows for continual engagement, adjustment, and iteration. If we are not documenting any of this, we can't even hold ourselves accountable for what we thought we'd like to do. So this is, I think, a common problem we get into, is that we can complain and talk about what isn't getting done. And looking at the 1974 plan, when things were on the plan way back when and they didn't get implemented, we should be asking why not and hold people accountable why they're not getting implemented. It's the same thing here. We need to be looking at what it is that we're doing and how do we go back for continual engagement, continual adjustment, and iteration, and making sure that things are getting completed and that we're achieving the goals in an equitable way for all. Action 8.8.3.1, secure financing for planning and management of the Innovation District. Action 8.8.3.2, dedicate efforts to attract and retain and grow talent. And a quote from the comp plan: growing talent, while the most time and resource intensive of these 3 categories, is described by practitioners as the very heart of the district's core mission. On one hand, growing talent means growing entrepreneurial capacity and catalyzing startups and spin-offs dedicated for commercializing ideas. So right now we've got a management and talent issue that we need to be building on, and this is something from our leadership all around the city. Is any of our nonprofit organizations that are looking at training and management, all these should be honing in on the innovation districts within each of our main neighborhoods. There should be an entity, like it was mentioned in the previous segment, of tying these neighborhoods together, and so that they're sharing ideas, they're iterating and looking at growth as they progress through the next 2 decades. Continuing on this idea, all practitioners interviewed underscored the extent to which they design programs, even often constructing new buildings to support the growth process of entrepreneurs. It's about programming, choreographing, spontaneous opportunities for smart people to interact with each other. On another level, growing talent means developing a feeder system of STEM workers in the general and customized skills necessary for participation in innovative sectors. Recent work and experiences will be highlighted in the section promoting inclusive growth. This is important in setting up a system that just builds on itself. This is really what we're constructing, working together within what we're recognizing the failures of previous decades, is making sure that there's a process for all and that it's inclusive, is that we're not missing anybody from the table. And this ultimately brings us to Objective 8.8.4, revitalize neighborhoods adjacent to innovation. Innovation districts are a platform to regenerate adjoining distressed neighborhoods, as well as creating educational, employment, and other opportunities for low-income residents in the city. And I'm reminding of the book Designing Regenerative Cultures by Daniel Christian Wall. This is important to think about, is that this is a sustainable process. And we go back to the 3 horizon mindset, the triple bottom line, community capacity building, the chaotic model. All these elements are involved in this process. As we close out this segment in this chapter, we can look at some additional sidebars. The first that comes up is the Class A office space. In central Pennsylvania, the definition of Class A office space has become confused by overuse and misappropriation. In fact, there are no office spaces in the region that would qualify as nationally rateable Class A office space. The region desperately needs nationally rateable space to attract national tenants. That space should be in the core of Harrisburg. The nationally rateable Class A office space has some of the following criteria: high high-rise building in prime central business district, a flagship building in its market. The architecture is concrete and steel, distinctive design. It has an attractive look, superior exterior finishes on the curtain wall, and interior finishes. It also has an environmental focus. Certifications include BOMA, Best, and LEED. It also has responsible sustainability practices in place. Continuing on, the tenant space, the experienced and professional manager providing centralized tenant service call system, including maximum response time, concierge services, tenant relationship program. It also has amenities such as conference centers, fitness center, and service-oriented retail. Continuing with another additional sidebar, colleges and universities. Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, as well as other local institutions such as Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology and Penn State Harrisburg, are of particular importance in both education and workforce development for the technology fields. These are entities that we can continue to connect with, developing the long-term growth in technology and high skills education and job growth. And getting to innovation and anchors, this is a good sidebar to understand what's happening in other cities. Drexel University and other area anchors in Philadelphia are pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities presented through local procurement. So the goal is building these relationships within neighborhoods and the communities to make sure that there's a balance, there's a knowledge sharing economy that's in there to help build both education and job growth. These anchors are now coordinating efforts to hire local, including minority and women-owned businesses to provide these products and services, essentially creating their own local supply chains. As Lucy Kerman of Drexel observed, local businesses tend to hire locally, so anchors can effectively partner with local businesses, creating new jobs and opportunities. This is something that's untapped and should be something that's measured within an economic survey and be a continual metric of data for the next 2 decades. It would be something for Harrisburg City and focusing on economic development to put forth the measures to make sure that this job development and economic development can be tracked and see progress that is made, so that we're not blindly going into something without any objectives and goals and saying that, oh yeah, we're going to be addressing economic development, but never show how it's impacting the diverse population that we have within Harrisburg and the region. That's in race, that's in ages, as well as economic standing, and really getting into the fine detail of these things to better understand where our gaps are locally and how do we work to close these gaps so that our institutions, our organizations, our nonprofit organizations, our government agencies are all working to the same purpose of making sure that these gaps are closed as best as possible and held accountable by all the constituents around Harrisburg and the central PA area. So to wrap up all of the segments within Chapter 8, Economic Development, the conclusion to this chapter has a quote: "The fundamental value opportunity for economic development is to create and implement programs that allow the value latent in existing building assets to be yielded and reinvested in a cycle of value regeneration of city property." What this is trying to get at is that the economic development process that looks at sustainability, and ultimately this is a statement of triple bottom line, so that we're focused on people, place, particularly with the investment that's already made in our places, in our buildings. If we're understanding that, we're educating and we're providing workforce development and job growth within our places and our buildings, the economics will follow. So it's a sustainable process and a cycle of regenerating the city property as well as residents who live within that property. In this chapter, here's a quick summary of what we've talked about. We can increase the commercial space available at its core to create a critical mass as the indisputable location of choice for regional businesses because of the innovation that's happening here, as well as the residents who live here providing goods and services for the outside suburban area. Provide strategies for improved public transportation options. That is critical. When we also look at 3 things that are interrelated to build this innovation and growth. Master planning 3 new development areas. Look at innovating the type and variety of housing options all around our city, which builds these community cores. And then lastly, we have the growth of community amenities that build from within and support the local innovation in the districts. Through this triple bottom line, we'll reach a critical mass that opens up and broadens and transforms the city's real estate market into a multi-party marketplace, bringing it into play in the middle Atlantic region. So the potential here is to link us back up into what we were even back in the 1900s as a place of commerce and transit and also connectivity. All this has the potential to bring us together if we're thinking in this way, the triple bottom line. So this is the end of Chapter 8, Economic Development. We finished up priority number 3, which focused in on the private sector. We hope that you've enjoyed this process. These ran a little long because there's so much information here. I will encourage you to go back, and I'll have notes to go back in certain segments to look through, whether you're an individual, a community group, or someone working in the city, to figure out how to build capacity within any of your roles as being a resident, someone who works at the city, a visitor, or just someone who really cares deeply about our city and where it can go in the next 2 decades. So I hope this has been enjoyable. Thanks again, and take care.